This inequality problem has to be given to us in multiple choice form because when you're solving for it, the two best ways really are to have it graphed, or we use the answer choices as numbers to plug into the expression so that way we can solve for the inequality. If we were looking at the graph, you want to just make sure you're comfortable with your graphing calculator, plug in these two equations right here, and really what you're looking for is the one coordinate that shows up in both the shading here. So here we can see that if I take away the x minus y is greater than 1, that's our blue graph here. If I take that away, we can see that actually only one thing is falling into that spot. And then if I put it back in, it's still that 2, -1, which is D here, is the only one that shows up in both because it's also showing up in blue. So it shows up in blue by itself, it shows up in red by itself, and it definitely means that it shows up together. None of these ones are even close to being possibly true, but you have to graph that to kind of figure that out. I wouldn't recommend roughly graphing it on a paper just because you're not going to be able to create that type of accuracy that you're looking for. So if you don't have a graphing calculator, you don't feel like using it, what you can also do to save you some time, if you don't want to just use your graphing calculator, is to plug in your values into into these equations and make sure which one gives you the right one. Now remember, it has to solve for both of them. So I'm going to pick the one that has the easiest math to it to start eliminating answer choices until I get to where I need to be. So I'm going to choose this one because that's pretty easy. And so instead of x minus y is greater than 1, I'm just going to now replace this with -2 minus -1. And then that would be -2 plus +1, and then that would give me -1, which is that greater than 1? And that is not true, so it's not A. If I plug in the same thing for our option B, so I would have -1 minus 3, is that greater than 1? No, because that's -4, so it's not going to happen. And then here we have 1 minus 5, is that going to be greater than 1? And that is not true because that's -4, and that is not greater than 1. So it's definitely not C. And if I plug in for D, I can actually see that 2 minus -1, is that greater than 1? That is, because that becomes 2 plus 1, which means 3 is indeed greater than 1. So thankfully we can just do it by checking for 1. And if, let's say, 2 of them checked out for this bottom equation, you're going to figure out the right answer by plugging the 2 remaining answer choices into the top one here. But we didn't need to do that here.